Okay, guys, we are live and we are talking to a person that is indigenous that has had some run ins with the government that has a lot to do with the missing, murdered indigenous women and men. Um, I think it's important for all of us to understand that um, the indigenous people were the first people here. They are considered a minority, exactly like black and brown people are considered a minority. And I think it's really, really important that we talk about that. Um, this person wants to remain anonymous, and I am definitely okay with that. I think we all need to understand everything that's going on in the indigenous community so we can understand it as a minority of what's going on. So we'll go ahead and talk about it. I just love that picture, and I wish being non-indigenous that I could wear that and not um have people think that it's disrespectful, because I love that. I really do. So let's just get right in and let's talk about it, and tell us what has happened to you as an indigenous person.
Well, first and foremost, I want to bring up that it's Native American Heritage Month, and that's why I've chosen to come forward and speak and to let these other people know, citing the articles that, these people are afraid to come forward, that they should report this, because even though this is targeting indigenous populations and even other populations for that fact of the matter, that these things, they affect everyone. And it start normally, things, they'll start with us, and then they trickle and reverberate into other groups. And what I'm referencing, if no one has read it, there have been articles from NPR, National Public Radio, and even PBS NewsHour about fake sober homes, but it goes a little bit deeper than that. These were just flat out Medicaid scams in the state of Arizona. And these indigenous people from all over the country wound up in these places. And they were, targeted and exploited for whatever reason. And again, that's where individual experiences come in, but mostly because of certain circumstances and situations. It made it allowable and easily for indigenous people to be targeted, because unlike other states you move to, when you move to Arizona, after 10 days you're a citizen, you are a resident. They expect you to change over your driver's license, your car insurance, and even your car tag. And that's one, it seems like it's something seemingly innocent, but when you find yourself in the middle of one of these situations, then it seems a little strange. And so, because again, after, even in the articles, you want to figure out the how, the why, the where, the when, and how all these things are happening. There are laws and circumstances set in place. There's certain difficulties or disabilities that are counted for American Indians that aren't counted for other races. So in regards to these things, there were Medicaid scams regarding Indians, American Indians. There were hospice Medicaid scams, and there was a third one that wasn't
But
go
were
on.
they really scams? I mean,
Well, yeah, there were duplicate, going back to the articles and from what other people have, their testimony and what other people have heard. They were making duplicate Medicaid accounts over there. And so that a person can't have duplicate Medicaid accounts. And mostly from insurances, the maximum days, and the reason why, you might ask, why make a duplicate Medicaid account or a second one? Well, that has to do with billing. And if you look up most health insurances policies, they only cover 180 days, which are when they write these court orders out to keep people in these institutions. It's exactly 180 days.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
And then so when you look at little things like that, because again, other people will be like, okay, they ended up here, how did, because some of them, their tribe sent them or whatever reason. There was some people local to me that they just ended up there, somebody talked them into going there. They were
mm-hmm,
vulnerable people, and they said, pretty much told them, okay, well, let's go to rehab. And then they have this sensational stories that match the other people from these articles. And that's how it was pretty much a scam. And to put light on that part of it, there are more issues with it, but that you may want to ask those questions later. But those were from the news articles. Those were the main things that had tipped off whomever is leading the investigations on all of these cases.
understood, understood. Um, I guess my question is, well, my comment is, me being a Black woman of, so that means I, of course, am a, um, okay, let me rephrase this. So my kids are Black, white, and Mexican. So their dad is Mexican and white. And when we did the DNA, we found out that they have Indian blood in them. So they are a minority.
Yes.
But me as a Black woman, um, him being, their dad being white and Mexican, well, what he thought was Mexican, but is really Indian. Like, we don't know the disparities of the Indian population. And it, for me, just talking to you and understanding the things that are going on in the indigenous population is remarkable, to the point where it's like, I got a headache.
Yeah.
Like, are you serious? This is really going on? I guess it's just like people are like, again, with missing people, they don't understand that, of course, Black and brown people don't have the same help that a white person has. But at the same time, being Black and not understanding what you're going through as an indigenous person, it's crazy. Like,
Well, usually in my experience, mostly people will dismiss this and say, okay, the Indians are crying about something again. And this is why the rest of everyone should look at this, is because usually when the Indians are crying around, it's costing the government millions. And that's even true within antiquity, whenever these treaties were first made for healthcare, education, and well-being, all the treaties talk about healthcare, education, and well-being.
Mhm.
This is why, only for American Indians that things like alcoholism and drug abuse are considered a disability where they're not for other races. And
And
it's
that
because
just
that
blew my
distinction.
mind. That blew my mind when you said that. Like, what? Really? I
It,
never knew that. And and I'll say this, they do that for the indigenous, but they don't do, like,
yes.
is that um encompassed with the treaties that they had in the past?
Well, okay, so when you're looking at things like this, yeah, healthcare is, a guaranteed right. Whether in this case, it was yes, the indigenous population through the Indian Health Service is guaranteed healthcare, no matter what. And in these Medicaid programs, all these states, they're administrators to their own programs. In Arizona, American Indians have, through them, there's access to direct billing. And then also juxtaposed to that, even if you don't participate in IHS, out there, you don't have copays if you're American Indian if you turn in your tribal identification.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I, but hearing that on the other end, um, because let's just say I'm a nurse and I give services that I'm not even able to afford myself.
Yeah.
So I hear that as that's absolutely awesome. But how do you guys feel with that in the indigenous population?
Well, okay, it can be awesome, but when you have people out there that are being overly advantageous and opportunistic with certain populations in certain situations, because there are, other races that are caught up in the same cycle, through court orders and whatever else. You're always going to have people that will exploit these services and,
Mhm,
just do it for the wrong reasons.
mhm, mhm. That's just, well, I think that's in every culture.
Yeah, well, I
And that's
mean,
just my personal opinion. I don't want anybody to bash me
well,
about that, but it's
at
true.
the same time, well, you have to look at it this way. If these issues don't affect you, they
Mhm,
affect, taxpayer dollars,
mhm,
national budgets, all these things that are set aside to alleviate these problems, to stop these problems. You know, Other people that, because healthcare is commodified in this country,
absolutely.
and we're not subject to that for several reasons. And so, whenever healthcare is being commodified, you have to look at these sort of things, and
Mm,
it does affect everyone.
agreed. So let me ask you, do you feel comfortable talking about your own personal issues?
To an extent, yes. And it's
Good.
only in the way that it relates to these other people.
Absolutely.
Because again, I do want them to know that this can happen to anyone, whether you've had a history or a past. What it is I'm guessing that they're looking for vulnerable people, people that
Mhm.
seem that nobody would care, nobody's looking for them, or even then, maybe their family is tired of their struggle or
Mhm.
whatever issues they face as an individual, whether they be healthcare related, whether, whatever else their situation is. That's how, I'm looking to relate to these people, because from the articles from PBS and NPR, these people didn't want to come forward, and a lot of it, they were scared. scared because maybe they had been threatened, or whatever else can befall a human being. They don't want to come forward. I possibly thought also that maybe it was things like shame that might keep somebody,
Mhm.
because they don't
Mhm.
necessarily want to talk about this in the
You
first place. And here this
Mhm.
person was trying to get help, or even if they just got caught up in this situation, by accident or
Mhm.
whatever else,
Mhm.
they just didn't want to come forward.
Agreed.
And because
Absolutely.
again, until people report these things, it won't stop, because you have to look at it. In the government, certain things are akin to other things. Waste, fraud, abuse, neglect, those are all one and the same in the government. And
Mm.
really, what kind of grinds my gears about it, just taking myself out of the situation and observing, it's the waste. And
Mm.
just somebody capitalizing off of somebody's misfortune. And again, physicians, that's how they work. They
Mhm.
wouldn't have a need otherwise. And I'm
Mhm.
thankful for these people and all that they give and sacrifice, because these careers aren't easily obtained. But at the same time, when you have somebody taking advantage of these certain people for these
Mhm.
situations, then that's something that everyone else needs to look at too.
Agreed. Absolutely agree. Absolutely agree. It's crazy. Let's talk about your personal experience. And
Well,
what and I'm going to tell you, do not go into certain details, just a roundabout way to let everyone know that this is what's happening to people, whether it be you or the person in 3 counties or states or countries later, so they can be aware that this is happening and we need to do something about it.
okay, so the gist of it was that I was caught in these mental institutions. Whether I needed the care or not, there were a lot of court orders set in place for me to stay in these places. And within my circumstance, I was one of the people that where they created the duplicate Medicaid accounts. With me, I really don't know what goal. I could tell you the overall tones of it, and again, it hurts me being an educated person, being what Aimé Césaire would talk about in The Tragic Elite, the laws, and this is where it relates to all minorities. This is America. The laws of hyper descent are real.
Mhm.
And so, back to former public policy of the old Indian schools and kill the Indian, save the man. For me, what I noticed was things like, I was, because I am a mixed person, people wanted to strip away my
Mhm.
identity. And,
Yes,
you know,
yes, yes. We need to
being a
talk about that
person,
too.
yes, with disabilities such as this issue, I need dark glasses pretty much to survive. And even within that state, they were going to send me to full blind training. It was approved. I had photophobia, and part of it is that, unless for whatever reason that's causing this inflammation related blindness, you have this inflammation related blindness, and it can't be cured unless the inflammation is cured. So, with this,
Mhm.
I couldn't get a pair of glasses unless I talked to a chaplain, and that chaplain was Catholic. And there was a lot of issues like that going on, to where you couldn't get what you needed
I'm
unless you
so sorry.
agreed to certain things.
I'm sorry. I lost you. Can you repeat that last part again?
You couldn't get certain services, or even privileges, unless you agreed to certain things. Like myself, again, one of the situations was where I had to speak to a chaplain, to get something like glasses, and the chaplain would be Catholic. In a
What?
lot of these, yes. And there are so many more details that went on with a lot of this. And again, when I review and, just take an observational standpoint, basically, like, whenever they were doing such things like kill the Indian, save the man, somebody would have taken someone like me and wanted to strip their identity and
Ye-
wanted
mm,
to strip the things that made that person, their ties to their community, whatever it was, their belief systems.
that is crazy. I'm sorry. Like that's
Well, I mean, for instance, myself, I was told repeatedly, okay, so again, when I started out in these places, they, whenever I would say things like my belief system was in the Native American church, uh, I was told no, I wasn't, allowed it. And even in some court documents, they would make up some sort of explanation. In one of them, it said I belonged to a Native American church. That is very different than the Native
what you
American
believe
church.
in, right? Hmm.
Well, I mean, a Native American church could, out anywhere, you could have an Indian Baptist church. But does that actually mean I'm a Baptist? No, that's something very different from the Native American church.
Mm. Okay, that's interesting.
Well, I mean, when you look at indigeneity, it's more than just a piece of paper.
Hmm. Agreed.
There's usually community and cultural ties. I was raised, in this community that, I'm a part of. And
Hmm.
so that, would be the main qualifier there, because presenting, someone might say, okay, Hispanic female. And, they would say, somebody would say something to me in passing. I would say, oh, well, no, that can't be like this because I'm Indian. The first thing I would hear from some of the staff, and from what I understood, is that staff would provoke you. Again, there's certain situations to make you stay in there longer. And so someone would tell me, no, you're not, in reference to being Indian. And it's just like, okay, you know, what was the purpose of that? And so from what I seen, basically, I don't know if they thought this was a cure or causation, that maybe they thought that these cultural ties that I had were causing some of these problems, or that maybe even that they were a delusion. And, no, these things are not the causation of problems. Whenever I look at, things in retrospect, being involved in these cultural activities are really what keeps a person out of trouble. If you want
Mm.
my, personal opinion and to speak upon that, the people with these ties, that's, whoops. Okay, so people with these ties, going forward with stuff like that. So with me, I had the distinction on my insurance, that, okay, this woman is Indian. They don't pay copays in this state. Well, I didn't find out that they signed me up for a separate Medicaid until another patient said, "Oh, well, no, you have Mercy Care." Mercy Care, the type of Mercy Care I had was for homeless people. And when I was almost forced into a group home, that would have been illegal, being that I own two properties in a different state. Because if you're homeless, nationally,
Hmm.
there's a legality to homelessness.
Right.
And for them to be able to charge, Medicaid for services for a homeless person, and then just telling me, because again, I found out from another patient that I had, that somebody took and when I did look at it and investigate on my own, that yeah, she was right. A second, I even seen on a computer screen where that second mercy care was there, and that it had, both of them. And then when I looked at one of the oh, what do they call that whenever they send you not home, well, I was sent back to the place, they had a different height on my on my chart. Something, I've never been 4'11" in my life,
What?
and yeah, and so with that, like I'm saying, maybe they wanted to strip me of that identity, because again, they kept saying
Right.
Hispanic
Mhm.
female, and they wanted to take that away from me. There was a part of it where someone was like, "Oh, well, you need to go to church." Little did they know, formerly I had been married to a Pentecostal preacher, and when I wasn't eligible for Catholicism, then things took a different turn.
Mhm.
And with all of that, that's how it was tied into that. And because I'm still confused about a lot of it, what was the aim, what was the purpose of this treatment, that treatment, these words, those words, that. And
Mhm.
so, because again, in that place, American Indians do have a distinction in how this is charged, that's charged, billing.
Mm. Mm. And that's different from everyone else?
Yeah, to whereas, okay, so with me, because the way I present, possibly somebody may have thought, well, she shouldn't be entitled to these things because we don't determine her to be an American Indian.
What? Wait, wait. What?
Well, I
They
mean, I wasn't the person that signed me up for that second Medicaid account.
Oh, I gotcha. Gotcha.
So you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Maybe they gave me the type, and again, the 180 days in billing, maybe they gave me the type that they thought that I should have been allowed.
Mhm. Mhm. Understood.
Because again, this goes down to, from what I've seen, race politics and who gets what benefits where and why.
Mhm. Hmm. Hmm. Understood. I just think you're actually teaching me so much right now that I can actually teach my kids. My kids are grown, but at the same time, I cannot teach them. I cannot teach them about their indigenous heritage. Um, I can tell you that their dad can teach them about their indigenous heritage because he didn't even know he was Indian.
Yeah.
you know, um, so I thank you so much for um, helping me to understand. But at the same time, excuse me, at the same time, I think what you're saying is so important for the um, missing persons, whether it be black, brown, anything. Because to me,
Well,
that's so important.
yeah, because when somebody goes missing, you don't know who, when, where, or what.
Right, right. You don't know if it's a runaway. You don't know if this person's been abducted. You don't know if this person is trafficked. You don't know anything. And again, with me having three people missing in my family, I don't know what has happened. It could be domestic violence. It could be sex and human trafficking. It could be anything. So I think it's important to have every aspect of every minority, first of all, and every aspect of a missing person. Again, runaways, um, sex and human trafficking, domestic violence. I think it's important for us to know all of that. And with you, I've never had anybody on here that talked about Indigenous people. And I think
Well,
that's so important.
what's in this system, and another thing that people aren't looking at is, ultimately there are a ton of laws set in place, and again, they're working on legislation for, missing Indigenous persons, murdered and missing Indigenous persons.
Are they? Are they
Yes.
really?
It's
Are they
similar
real?
to the Asian hate crime bill that was first introduced out of
Mhm.
California.
Yep.
And it's akin to that. And it's because this group is targeted for whatever
Mhm.
reasons. But you have to realize that a lot of us were the most rare human beings on the face of this earth.
Absolutely.
And people, for whatever reason, hone in on that. And with this, if you have, let's say you have a female or even a male caught up in these systems, because again, this part does target more women than men. You could separate a mother from her children indefinitely.
Mhm.
And that again goes along with that. If you break down the family, you break down these people's identities, it's more towards a goal of assimilation. And
Mhm.
because
Mhm.
every policy that was ever set forth was in regards to Indigenous people was about
Mhm.
assimilation.
Right.
And with that, they found that, people, they wanted to break down these people, wanted to break down these families.
Mhm.
And a lot of that is also going on there too.
That's wild. That's just wild. That's
Well,
wild.
I mean, in my circumstance, a lot of it, it kept me away from my children. And then it allows, these people to have more leverage, if their kids are caught up in this system and they're caught up in this other system themselves,
Mhm. Mhm.
what happens there?
Right. Agreed. Absolutely. That's why I think we need so much more Indigenous people to talk about um, what's going on in their community because we don't know. Uh, we don't know. We can ask, and someone can give their opinion of what's going on in that community, but we really don't know. Um,
Well, I mean, yeah, imagine it. You're wearing glasses. Imagine if you couldn't get glasses unless you had to talk to a chaplain.
that's just
And what
crazy.
qualifies that chaplain, to diagnose a medical condition?
That's that's just that is so wild to me. Like I think I need to, and if anyone's out here watching, I think um uh we need to have more Indigenous people on this interview so we can talk about it. Because if I'm a black woman that has three people missing in their family, but I sit here and I think I'm like, the Indigenous people had so many people missing that what I'm going through, I am in cahoots with what they're going through. But there's a lot of white people that aren't. And I'm not saying anything about white people. I think we have to come together as a whole to talk about missing persons. But for the Indigenous and the black and brown people coming up missing, it is crazy. And we have to put that out there to the reason that I do these interviews is to make sure that everyone is aware of the missing pandemic because a lot of people do not know. When my 18-month-old cousin came up missing, I didn't realize that this was an issue that was going on. So my cousin came up missing, my brother-in-law came up missing, and then when my sister came up missing, it was like, what the hell is going on?
Well, I know with us, okay, so inadvertently, okay, so you have experienced three people, and that's more than what the average person faces. But in these indigenous families, everyone has at least one person, because even
That's
myself,
my point.
in
That is my
2000,
point.
yes, in
Mhm.
2010, I had a cousin go missing, and the OSBI, at first they just treated it like, she was just out and partying or whatever, and she wasn't.
What is
And
OSBI?
Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation, and cadaver dogs even went and looked for her at the place where they had found her, and they found nothing. And then I didn't really, you don't know. And so you have this hope of, and Indian people, they look at it different. They think, okay, as long as we get the person home, whatever they went through, we could, they'll come through the other side, everything's going to be all right. But and so you keep, that hope in mind. And
Mhm.
so anyhow, with that experience, I didn't know her mother had her SIM card. I didn't know a lot of things. And so just blindly one day I was like, hey, if you're out there or something, we just all want to know if you're okay. If you're somewhere, you could just, come to me and mom's, and we won't tell nobody where you're at. We just want to know that you're good. Well,
Mhm.
the next day she was found, and my cousin and I had been a recent graduate, and I had to take this class in forensics to graduate. It was the only senior seminar that I had available to me, and I wanted to graduate that summer, right? And so my cousin, though, she had a different discipline and field of study, but when they found her, we said, that's not how a body decomposes in heat. They found her hanging, and there was dirt behind her ears.
Wait,
Dirt behind her
you
ears.
found her deceased?
They did. The whatever police were looking, the day after I had texted her is when she was found. And it
Wow.
did bring us a lot of closure, but at
Right,
the same
right, right.
time they still ruled her death undetermined.
What?
And yes,
Oh
and
my God.
they blamed it on her body being too badly decomposed. But again, I question that. Okay, they bring cadaver dogs through there already.
Mhm. Mhm.
What is wrong with their thinking? What had happened? And so we all, and again, that's just my story. It
Mhm.
doesn't,
Mhm.
go
Right.
on to
Agreed.
the countless things that have happened to other people. We see a lot of tragedy, but through that, we keep moving forward.
And that's just crazy. You should not have to just move forward. You guys are the foundation of America. And for us not to understand your plight or what's going on in your community is crazy. And that's why I think it's so very important that I, I need to get more Indigenous people on here. I do. Just in my case, again, I don't feel like we've had any cooperation from uh, legal, but I think it's important that if we need to do that, we need to do that.
Well,
I'm
in a
gonna.
lot of these cases, what I seen, if they did not have a family member there to bring them out, they just didn't make it. There was a story of three people from where I'm from. Two had to have, one eventually stole a cell phone, called his tribe, and they rescued him, and the
What?
female that had disappeared there with him. But there was a third person, and again, one of the girls, she was supposed to, they said they were taking her to a group home and she was in these handcuffs, and when she went inside to it was an empty house.
Shut up.
Yes, and the third person that was with them, she was killed. And
What?
so, yes.
What?
And so again, if you didn't have a family member, because again, my uncle, he had to go back twice just to bring me out. And again, with these other people, all their stories were the same, that their family, was concerned. And I was very fortunate to have been one of them people that made it out.
Mm, listen, look, I've took off my earrings and I'm ready to fight. Like, are you serious? Like,
And
that's crazy.
well, the wild thing is, when these sort of things happen, you don't know the who, the when, the where, or the what. And
Right.
most people, they just dismiss it because this
Right.
person is undervalued for whatever
Absolutely.
reason.
Because of the color of our skin,
Yeah.
honestly.
Well,
Man,
also,
do
there's
you see my
notion.
ears? Are they red? Because I'm like, what? For real?
Well, I mean, there also, there's notions and other things outside of our culture, this whole you have to do things yourself, pull yourself, the bootstrap model with,
Yep.
average Americans and immigrants. You have to, stand up for yourself. It's all about the self. Well, that goes against our values, as a people, to where we do look after people and not necessarily enable them like we're
Uh,
so greatly accused of, but you just don't give up on a human being.
Period. No matter what, black, brown, whatever, you do not give. I'm sorry, I'm just tripping. Being a nurse and taking care of whoever, I don't care if I don't know anything about their financial status, if they're Mexican, Asian, Puerto Rican, have Medicaid, have Medicare, have that's not what I'm in it for. I'm in it to take care of people. And just to hear what you're saying is like,
Yes. Well, I
it's wild.
mean, there's the human condition of it, but then also, again, what people should be looking at is this place, even in the hospice, okay, that one was
Yes.
regardless of waste. They were in, this was happening within the rehabs and other situations with American Indians, like I'm saying, with the hospice. And then there's a third scam that I'm forgetting about. But with
Let,
that, they were
let me let
charging
me
Medicaid for the
let me ask you
care.
something real quick. In the indigenous community, do you guys believe in hospice?
Well, yes, to an, okay, so mostly, I would say that with the programs that are set up, they would rather have, people pass at home with their family. But
Mhm.
that's not always the case because they need a greater care. So with these hospice deals, the state was charging services for people, and it was with this rehab too. They were charging services for people that had been deceased.
What?
Yes. And so if you want my personal opinion on that, that is a waste of taxpayer dollars.
Hmm.
Just, when you're looking at things like GDP and budgeting,
Hmm.
something like that isn't helping anybody. And then, like, somebody might say, okay, well, all these people are crazy. There's no help for them. There's no hope. This is what they need. Well, what was the point of charging for services that either nobody received, or again, charging for services for a deceased person?
Agreed. Mhm. Agreed. And that happens no matter what um, ethnicity you are. That
Yeah,
happens.
and that's where it did overlap into some, into other things, but for some reason, American Indians with this, and they said it had something to do with the direct billing and other circumstances. This group was targeted, more than others. But, and again, it could go with other specific laws that I'm unaware of,
Mhm,
because
mhm.
again, I only know a fraction of this, and I could only speak to my own
Right,
experience, but
right.
with whatever situation. And then from what I found out is when I moved, they really didn't know too much about this, as just, once you got out of their loopholes, then, they didn't really know what to do. And a lot of it was control and
But
whatever
are
else.
you talking about from a different state?
Yeah, I know after I
Okay.
moved, a lot of people were angry that they couldn't enforce court orders. And in those hospitals, I was forced to take medication that I was violently allergic to. And when they made the second Medicaid account, that's when I seen a rheumatologist, actually, because they withheld medication from me, like my arthritis medication. They were only giving me these two drugs that I had, and they swore up and down that they were for anxiety, and they weren't. One of them was for a migraine and intracranial hypertension, disorder that I have. And the other one was for allergies. Once I started immunotherapy, I had to take a certain drug twice a day so that I wouldn't become immune to Benadryl, but they needed something to control, my
Mm.
hives or eczema or something.
Do
And
you mind
so
telling us what those me being a nurse, I'm, like, very curious to know, like
Inderol and hydroxyzine, those were the only two medications I was allowed. They wouldn't give me my methotrexate. That is for my arthritis, and
what?
that also controls the inflammation that I have.
Absolutely.
I I needed, because I was caught up in those hospitals. I was due for certain vaccinations. I wasn't allowed to get those vaccinations, and so I
What?
went without a lot of
Wait,
medical
wait, wait,
care.
wait. Stop, 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 stop. You were not allowed to get vaccinations, but you
Yes.
wanted them?
Yes, and then, like I was saying, I
What?
wasn't allowed. I would beg for them to send out medical release of information, and this is kind of what was funny later, but I would beg them to send out medical release of information forms, from my other providers, because they were asking me who my primary doctor
Right,
was, and it was
right,
outside of that healthcare system.
right.
They were, and I was telling them, in this other state, the Indian Health Service in the other state where I'm from, they have all my information, that has everything up until, because I left Arizona for healthcare, or left Oklahoma to Arizona for healthcare and education and then atmosphere.
Mhm.
So, with that, up until I developed antibodies to a certain arthritis infusion medication, and those are serious drugs to take. That's what took me to
Absolutely.
Arizona.
Mhm.
I was there to see specialists, and so anyhow, all of my health records had all the information that they would have needed about me. IHS can go from cradle to grave,
Mhm, mhm,
and
mhm,
they have all your information, and it's a government system, and they kept
mhm.
refusing to get the records from all of these places. And then later, it was kind of funny, these places, after I had been gone and there was other circumstances involved, it wasn't until a separate court case that later all these people wanted this information later. But again, they weren't allowed it because they weren't a
What?
medical provider looking to further
What?
all of this. And so anyhow, I was forced to take these drugs that I was allergic to. And when I say allergic, this stuff, certain psychotropic meds, they could stop people's hearts and breathing.
Absolutely,
And I was
absolutely.
just one of those rare people that these things had happened to. And so when I seen the rheumatologist, the 411 self, that they created. That person said this could be the medication, and then later when I went back to my original state, they said, okay, yes, this is this medication, and you're gonna have to stop taking it. And so anyhow, because I take all kinds of things. I don't mind taking something if I needed it, but I won't take anything that's going to harm me.
Mhm.
And so with that, they kept refusing to send for, these medical records, and they had list of my allergies and, a lot of the problems I was having in there. And so that was one thing that I noticed. And I don't know what would be the point of not sending for medical records, but they didn't. And I could make assumptions, but that's not for
Crazy.
me to make. That's for investigators to make.
That's just crazy. I
Yeah.
mean, being a nurse and being in the medical field and knowing what's going on, that is just it's called continuity of care.
Okay.
If I am taking care of a person that has allergies that are, I see it in the medical records, and how can I take care of you if I know you have these allergies and these doctors are prescribing that for you? For my license, I will not give that. And I will tell anybody, the administrator, the doctor, I'm not giving that. It says she's allergic and I'm not giving it to her. So you need to give me something else so I can give her that where it will not have a um oh uh oh God, what's the word? Well, like you won't have anything happen to you. Man, I just think
It
that's
seems like
so
it would be more
crazy.
liability than anything.
Absolutely. To my license that I paid for. And I, listen, man, that's just absolutely freaking crazy to me. It is.
And let's say that a person went and followed up. Now I bypassed it and went, straight to the heads, bypassed hospitals and whatever. Let's say that somebody tried to make a complaint within these hospitals. What they do is they have
Mhm,
these health agencies that subcontract in these hospitals.
mhm,
And the hospitals, if
mhm,
you go to look for those providers and these nurses and all these people that are doing these things, they won't
mhm.
be on there. They
Absolutely.
are
Mhm,
contracted through a separate thing, and they could travel around. This staff could work in Houston this day, and they'll be in Florida,
mhm,
someplace the rest of the week.
mhm,
And they just pretty much move people around like that. And
mhm.
then when the patient is transported from one place to another, they don't know where they're going. They could be transported in the middle of the night, and you're not allowed your phone. You're not allowed other things that other types of patients, are
What?
allowed. And you could only call, what's approved, who's approved, or whatever. And so when you're being moved to these places, if you don't remember phone numbers, then,
You're fucked.
yeah, you could possibly be lost within the system.
That's so crazy. So I'm going to tell you and anybody that's following us or listening, I am going to find a lot more indigenous people, men and women. I think it's important that we have them on um, our interviews because, man, just like what you're saying is just like, what? I think it's important that we have that. Um, so I'm gonna say this. We've been on here an hour and a half, almost 2 hours, and I thank you for being here and talking about what you've gone through and what you've seen in your community. And I just ask that everyone, black, brown, whatever, talks about what they see in their community.
I
And
agree.
I have to say this, I have to plug this in here. Um, our second annual Missversary is going to be held in Indianapolis, Indiana on February 3rd from 4 to 6 p.m. And I hope that everyone that's watching can please be there. We've got so many people that are going to talk. And um, for me, when I founded the missing struggle, I wanted everyone to know that every facet of missing people is important. When I say that, I mean domestic violence. Someone can kill a person through domestic violence and they're missing their loved ones. Um, Runaways. I think it's important to understand that. Let me back up. I think it's important that any missing people, whether it be children or adults, we need to be on top of it. But for me, I advocate for the adults because a lot of people are advocating for children, but there's not many people that are advocating for adults. I think it's important that domestic violence is um, a branch of people missing because, again, I have a cousin, 18-month-old cousin that's missing, possibly from domestic violence. I have a brother-in-law that's missing, possibly from domestic violence. I have my sister that's missing, possibly from domestic violence. Um, I think it's very important that we hit on every facet of missing persons in every case of missing people, whether it be indigenous, whether it be white, whether it doesn't matter. We need to hit on that all day, every day. And I appreciate you so much for being on and talking about your case and talking about what you see in the indigenous community. And I want to so bad have more people, more indigenous people on here so we can talk about it and we can ask questions and we can do this. I have to say this, and I hope you don't take it offensively. Um, uh, when I restarted this, um, when I restarted the interviews, it's been a while. It's been at least 6 weeks. So I was sick, like in the hospital or whatever. Um, I did not have people that wanted to be um, in the forefront for interviews. Um, I had some personal issues that were going on, but again, I think it's so important for the indigenous people to talk about it and let everyone know what's going on. I can't do that. I have to have help. So if anyone is out there and they want to talk about it or they know somebody that wants to talk about it, please reach out to me because I'm I'm ready. I'm ready. And I thank you so much for being here and talking about it.
Well, I appreciate, what you do and your kind words.
Mm, thank you. Thank you. We got to come together no matter what. Got to do it. All right. Um everyone, we're going to say goodbye, and if you guys want to reach out to any of us, please reach out to the missing struggle at gmail.com, the missing struggle at on YouTube, the missing struggle on Facebook. So talk to us if you want to learn more.